Another player from the top of the transfer portal is in contact with Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin is portal kinging again.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media at Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about the Michigan Wolverines safety Keon Sabb entering the portal, and Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin may be hot on the trail. We look at the offensive line pre-spring, and while on paper it's phenomenal, we tell you why it will never be just right in this unit. We'll talk about the Ole Miss playing with their food on Saturday night, but ultimately beating the Missouri Tigers as well by 3 points. So this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and YouTube. Thank you very much for making the Locked On Sports podcast your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers that make the show what it is. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Interesting thing, we were getting ready the last couple of weeks. I think we got about 4 weeks until spring practice. I think the week after spring break, it's going to get underway. And we thought basically the transfer portal news was nearing an end. And then, boom, Keon Sabb from the Michigan Wolverines. He's able to enter the portal because of Jim Harbaugh going to the San Diego Chargers. Keon Sabb, a defensive back on the national champion Wolverines team. Now, if you look at this, David Johnson from Inside the Rebels, Rebels 24/7, says sources tell Inside the Rebels that Ole Miss has made contact with Michigan portal safety Keon Sabb. And if you go by On3's Hayes Fawcett, 18 schools have contacted Keon Sabb early on in his recruiting, including Georgia, including Alabama, including Penn State, Florida State, Tennessee, kind of the usual suspects, Oregon State, Oregon, and Oklahoma as well. Notre Dame has contacted him as well. Now, Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, has gone with Jim Harbaugh to the San Diego Chargers. Basically, they've got the hammer that's going to come down on Michigan because it is going to come down. I don't know what's going to happen, but they're going to be punished for what they did. And Keon Sabb is a good player. And this year, 2 players that were expected to go to the NFL kind of returned, which left Sabb in a similar type position. He finished last season with 28 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 4 passes defended, including against Washington. He had 6 total tackles, 2 passes defended as well. So he's a good player, but he was in line to start. His starter came back at his safety position, which was going to make it a little bit more difficult. He had to learn a new defensive coordinator. He had to learn a whole bunch of new stuff where any advantage to him coming back to Michigan was essentially lost. So why not go into the transfer portal and to see if you can make yourself a little bit of money in the process? Again, Sabb, he was 6'1", 210 pounds. He's out of New Jersey. He was a sophomore last year. He went from New Jersey and played at the IMG Academy as well. 14 solo tackles, 2 picks, 4 passes defended as well. Now, Ole Miss is going to recruit likely a running back in the secondary transfer portal window at a minimum, okay? I think that is the position to where you can count. Yes, Ole Miss is going to recruit that position. So we'll see who's available after the next transfer portal window, and Ole Miss is going to recruit a good chunk of them, okay? Trying to find somebody that can take 95 to 100 carries off of this running back unit and be productive. Other than that, Ole Miss is going to take the best available player. If a good player that is a talent upgrade comes in, Ole Miss is not in a position to where they can have no room at the end type situation because they're good at a certain room. No, Lane Kiffin has built up the talent of this room by doing just the opposite of that. Any good player is more than welcome to come here and compete. And we can see that by what happened last season with the quarterback room. So Keon Sabb is more than welcome to come in. Key Lawrence, Trey Washington, a lot of good players in the secondary need to be ready to compete. And Keon Sabb needs to come in with the ability potentially to win the job. He's still going to have to win the job if he comes to Ole Miss because of what this defense has built. This defense is going to be in a position in 2024. If this defense gives up 17 points a game, I think we're going to be in a good shape because picture last year's offense, and most of the production is coming back, okay? Most all of the production is coming back. They only have to score 20 points a game, and they're going to win most of their games. I think they're going to be able to do that, especially when you consider that Ole Miss has Jackson Dart and Trey Harris and Juice Wells and Deion Smith coming in and Caden Prieskorn, Ulysses Bentley, all of these weapons that are lined up all over the field. They're going to be able to score points. And nobody, I mean nobody, is going to doubt that Lane Kiffin is going to be able to score those points. And everybody, we always forget about Jordan Watkins. Jordan Watkins, I want to bring him up as well as a weapon because I do think he's a weapon. He's just a name for whatever reason that just kind of goes back to the back of the Rolodex. It's absolutely crazy. Young people, Rolodex is basically our contacts list on our phone before we could put them in our phone. Okay, that's what a Rolodex is. All right. So this transfer portal cycle, Ole Miss is still in talent acquisition mode. Now they're trying to do whatever they can do to compete for and win a national championship in 2024. That means that if there's a good player available and that player fits their profile, they're going to get said player. Now, Ole Miss has a connection with Sabb from Amorian Walker, the cornerback out of Michigan that transferred to Ole Miss after the first primary transfer portal window. Amorian Walker transferred to Ole Miss. Now, that is what my guess would be of how contact was made with this prospect. And I do think that this prospect and Keon Sabb, they knew each other. Now, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say they're friends or anything like that. I'm not going to dare be that presumptuous of what's going on. But I am going to say that they know each other and they know who they are. And they spend a lot of time in the DB room. And if there's a chance of a player coming out, he's probably going to lean on that player a little bit to figure out what is said. And one thing is true about Ole Miss football in 2024. Playing football at Ole Miss in 2024 is fun. You look on the sideline, the antics going on, all of this screams fun. It's one of the reasons Ole Miss is so successful in the transfer portal is because their brand that they're putting out is fun. And I think that Keon Sabb is going to see that it's fun there. He can come here, play a year, probably make a couple of bucks, and get ready for the NFL. He could be a one and done. He could be a two and done. But it's a situation where Sabb has a chance to be a really good football player for Ole Miss. Now, Key Lawrence, Trey Washington, Yam Banks, those guys playing in the defensive backfield, John Saunders, they're not going to just give up their position. Whoever comes in is going to have to work for it. Heck, I'm not willing to concede that Yam Banks and Key Lawrence is going to win a job over Trey Washington and John Saunders. I'm not 100% ready to concede that. I know they're going to compete for it, though. Everybody has to compete for positions on this football team, and that's honestly because they're good. This is the most talented football team that Ole Miss has put together in my lifetime. If you look at me, there's gray hair all over the head. So whenever I say in my lifetime, that carries a little bit of weight. Maybe not the most weight, but a little bit of weight. And Ole Miss going up and trying to get a Keon Sabb and trying to set it up. We'll bring it up one more time. Where Keon Sabb, 28 tackles, 2 interceptions, 4 passes defended, 6'1", 210 pounds. He's heard from 18 schools, including Georgia, all of the usual suspects on the board as well. a really, really good football player. And I'm excited to see exactly what happens with Ole Miss in that situation. So thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day. We're just getting started. Ole Miss added 40% of the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line, and now this spring is going to be an absolute war for playing time. We'll explain that in just a second. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn just isn't another job board. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to these professionals that you just simply can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive, because they know that small businesses, they wear so many hats, they might not have the time or the resources to make that hire. So hiring is easy when you have this many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I'm not sure, but I think it's on Amazon Fire now as well. It's just growing everywhere. This Locked On network it's almost getting out of hand. It's growing so much. Now, we are going to continue our position by position breakdowns with the offensive linemen. This is the last offensive skill position to go through, and we're going to hit all the offensive linemen. And there's 3 different things that you need to know going into this. First off is players that are being brought in via the transfer portal. That's Diego Pounds, Nate Kalepo, Julius Buelow, and Gerquan Scott, those 4 players. Now, the next category are returning players. Jeremy James, Micah Pettis, Jalen Williams, and Caleb Warren. 4 more. And look at new developmental type players that the staff absolutely loves in Bryson Sanders and Preston Cushman. That's 10 players. 10 players is enough for a 2 deep, but they're not going to play a 2 deep. Nobody even needs to consider that, because they haven't done it in 4 years and they're not going to do it now. Ole Miss could go 10 deep on the offensive line. They're not. It's going to come down to being really good in the front 5 and having 2 or 3 additional players that can kind of be fed in. And Ole Miss recruited players via the transfer portal that can help them with that. And Ole Miss recruited players to include individual talent. The individual talent of the offensive line got better. When you look at the offensive line, I'm expecting the front to be Diego Pounds starting at left tackle, Nate Kalepo starting at left guard, Caleb Warren starting at center, a dogfight at right guard. I'm not really ready to make a call at that position. And at right tackle, Micah Pettis. I think that between Gerquan Scott, Julius Buelow, Eli Acker, and Jeremy James, the right guard position is going to be an absolute fight during spring practice. I think that at center, Bryson Sanders has a chance to really step up to get into the rotation with Caleb Warren, or at least supplant Reese McIntyre. And we get to see if somebody like Gerquan Scott, who comes in with the transfer portal, he's good enough to snap the football as well. He is somebody that can play tackle, he can play guard, but can he play center? I'm pretty sure that he has. I'm not sure that he has recently. Either way, that's going to be a big portion of spring practice. Now, when you look at the newcomers coming in, Diego Pounds, who blocked for Drake May, who, as if most people don't know, he's a top 5 level pick in the NFL draft at North Carolina. He was trusted with the blind side of Drake May. I think he is going to end up taking that spot. I think at right tackle is going to be Micah Pettis. Okay. So those are the two on the outside. I think the third tackle will be Jalen Williams. And then you have the Swiss Army knife of Gerquan Scott. Those are your tackles. At guard, I genuinely think that it's going to be Nate Kalepo and it's going to be Gerquan Scott again, because I do think he is going to be the Swiss Army knife and he is an important cog in this offensive line moving forward. I know that he's a G5 player. He started probably 40 games in his college career. The two positions that are interesting are center and right guard. We need to pay attention to them in spring practice. I broke those down before. And at right guard, Micah Pettis, I think he's going to sit out there. And then whoever is the swing tackle is going to have to play there as well. This offensive line group probably is talented of a unit that Ole Miss has had in the last 20 years. Really, really good football unit. We'll see exactly how it happens. I think there was one year where it was like Chris Spencer, Doug Buckles, and somebody else that ended up getting at least a cup of coffee in the league. But this offensive line is at least that good. Now, why did I say this unit is not going to be what everybody hopes it's going to be? And I think that is schematic. I think two things. First of all, with the tempo, that means they're going to get tired a little bit quicker. Just by their size, they're going to get tired. B, they run block every single play for the most part. That's going to make it hard to pass defend. And C, you have a quarterback that is deep ball oriented. I'm not saying he only throws the deep ball or he forces the deep ball. I'm saying he's willing to hold on to the football to make plays down the field. Those three things are going to make the offensive line look a little bit worse than they are. I think this unit is much more talented than it was a year ago. I think when it actually comes down to it, their production may not be at a level that's better to the degree that they are a more talented unit than they were the year before. If that makes sense at all. It's easier to rush the passer whenever somebody is trying to run block you, whenever you're trying to attack them. And he comes through. They can get around and rush the quarterback. You're not going back and trying to catch people stepping and all the stuff whenever you think of pass pro, the stuff that made Laramie Tunsil $70 million or something like that. This unit isn't doing stuff like that. Ole Miss traditionally, because of this, has struggled when it's 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14, and staying on schedule is very important for this team. Individual talent-wise, I've made no bones and make no mistake. This is a more talented unit than Ole Miss had a year ago. It simply is. Like I said, you have 40% of the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line transferring into your program. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. Whenever almost half of that unit comes in and takes over, it's not nothing. And you look at right guard, and I think the Julius Buelow situation is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. You have him, you have Eli Acker, you have Jeremy James, you have Gerquan Scott potentially going over to that right guard. I think that spring practice is going to be a little bit of a war for playing time, honestly. I think you have a situation to where Jeremy James isn't going to let one of these newbies come in and take the job. Julius Buelow, he started the last 6 games for that unit. He is expecting to come in and play. Gerquan Scott I think he's at 45 career starts as an offensive lineman. And Eli Acker, it's just time for him to go. It's time for him to play. It's time for him to get on the field. He's played off and on over the last couple of years. It's time for him to take that step. And then you look at new guys like Bryson Sanders, like Preston Cushman, who are interior offensive linemen who are interested in taking that step as well. I just named 6 players that are going to be in line and are going to be fighting for that right guard spot. And any of those 6 players potentially would have started on last year's offensive line. This unit is talented. There's talent all over the field. Now, there's some schematic issues, there's some timing issues, and there's some tempo issues that doesn't help our offensive line. That's not going to change. So there's no sense trying to square peg and round hole this, trying to figure out what's going on. Ole Miss just has to get the most out they can, put the best of 5 on the field, and go as quickly as humanly possible. You have some running backs that are coming in that could be big play running backs. I think this offensive line is going to run block very, very effectively. And when you look at that, that is where this offensive line, being a more talented individual group, is going to show out. Whenever you see exactly what's happening, when Ole Miss is doing gap scheme type stuff, what they do for time to time, the gap scheme RPOs, I mean, that's kind of the wave of the future. Whenever these guys get in there and the interior offensive line, like Nate Kalepo, starts pulling and they run some simulated powers and counters, I think that's a situation where you can see Ole Miss is going to be able to get some push. Now, if there's a blitz coming through there into a gap where you're pulling from, that's where the run that's where the problem happens with this offensive line. And that's why teams that kind of engaged Ole Miss, that was the method that they kind of messed with our offense, was just coming upfield and blitzing and trying to play football in the backfield because of what it did to our protection, and us with the window dressing trying to kind of deceive more necessarily than actually out-talent the team. There were some problems that happened. Now, as the year went on last season, Ole Miss kind of got better and better and better and was able to deal with it. The offense got better and better. I think we will see in 2024 if that continue as well. Offensive line, like I said, most talented unit I can remember in a very long time. Extremely individually talented. It's going to be out about who wins and about how that unit gels, because this is one of the few units on the field where everybody kind of needs to be doing the same thing. So we'll see how that goes as well. So thank you again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. There's still more to come. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ole Miss got a win versus the Missouri Tigers. It wasn't pretty, but it didn't have to be. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins, all betting on your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, same game parlays, exclusive props, and much, much more if you just go to the site. Anyway, just visit the site, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. All right, Ole Miss took on the Missouri Tigers Saturday night in the SJB Pavilion in Oxford, Mississippi, and Ole Miss was able to win the game. Now, it wasn't a pretty win. It wasn't a situation where Ole Miss just won and walked away with it, but they got the win, and that's all that matters. Now, if you look at this, Ole Miss won the game by 3, 79-76. They did not shoot particularly well inside the arc. This is weird. They were 11-21 from outside the arc, but inside the arc, obviously that number goes way down. They didn't shoot free throws particularly well in that game either. I think they're getting a little bit tired as this season is progressing. Honestly, we'll talk about that in just a second. Ole Miss had 13 turnovers. They actually won the rebounding advantage with 35-27, and they outfouled Missouri 22-20. Missouri just shot lights out from the field. They shot nearly 50% from inside the arc, nearly 50% from outside the arc. They didn't turn the basketball over. Sorry about that. And rebounding wise, that's probably where they lost the game. Now, Missouri, they're not as good as Ole Miss as a basketball team. Ole Miss has a better basketball team right now than Missouri. That's no joke. Just look at records. Ole Miss is 19-6. The only basketball game that Ole Miss basketball has lost this year to a team without a number next to their name is LSU on the road. They don't lose at home to unranked teams, and it's hard to beat Ole Miss even on the road if you're not ranked. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I think Ole Miss, they went into this game needing to finish the season 5-2 for that slam dunk NCAA tournament appearance. Now they need to go 4-2. They knocked one off. It gets a little bit easier. If they can beat Mississippi State on Wednesday, which will be difficult, okay? Going down to the hump and winning a basketball game is going to be difficult in this situation. It's not a situation that I'm expecting it, if it's completely honest. Ole Miss needs to beat South Carolina. Then you got the free shot against Alabama. That where all of your expectations can kind of get turned on its head by winning that game. And then you have Texas A&M, then you have then you have Georgia as well. If you win those games and get to the tournaments and win. And I've told people all season, if you want to go back to think and listen to me, 9-9 for Ole Miss basketball wise in the SEC should be the line of it's been a good season. It's been a really good season, honestly. They go 9-9 in the SEC after winning, was it 3 SEC conference games a year ago? That is a win. Chris Beard's done a phenomenal job. He's gotten the best out of Matthew Morrell, which Kermit Davis, unfortunately, was never, ever to do. Alan Flanagan's had an up and down season, but he's still an extremely talented player. Jamin Brayfield's Jamin Brayfield, and he got Juju Murray, who, whenever he's going, Ole Miss is a hard team to beat. He's got some rim protectors. They've duct taped together a team, competitiveness-wise, that's actually pretty good. So if Ole Miss can get the win Wednesday night, if Ole Miss beats Mississippi State, you're playing with house money at that point, because that's one of the games that you're going into this thing and you're kind of chalking up an L, and you replace that with a W. That gives you a little bit of margin for error moving forward. Ole Miss has a win over Mississippi State. They're getting ready to play only one team that's ranked in their last 6 games. This could be a chance for Ole Miss to make a little hay on the basketball court. Now, like I said, I'm expecting at best probably 10-8. I'm putting the line at 9-9 of where Ole Miss needs to get. But we'll see exactly how it goes. But against Georgia, Ole Miss has the talent to beat Georgia. Ole Miss has the talent to win in Missouri. Ole Miss has the talent to beat Texas A&M. Ole Miss has the talent to beat South Carolina. Ole Miss has the talent to beat Mississippi State. I just think the hump will be very, very difficult. And Alabama's a free shot. It's an absolute free shot. They're going to come into the SJV Pavilion. It's going to be absolutely nuts. And hopefully you can affect them crowd-wise. And you can get off to the hot start and kind of push it out to a bigger lead than you could against the Auburn Tigers. And then you can see what happens. I think that Ole Miss has a chance to do something in that game that's pretty special, honestly. Maybe that's the game that Ole Miss just gets to where they wake up and everything's going. That is what I think might happen. But Ole Miss beat Missouri. All they had to do was beat Missouri. It doesn't matter if it's early. They played with their food, anything. As long as they got the W, it didn't matter. We're officially in that time of year that style points absolutely do not matter. Just win the game. If Ole Miss wins 4 out of their next 6, they're going to the NCAA tournament. It's simple as that. 4 out of their next 6, NCAA tournament. But it's on them. They have to rebound. They have to be in a situation to where loose balls that doesn't look like they're allergic to them, which sometimes it just feels like the ball is finding other players. They need to rebound fairly well, and they need to hit their shots. So we'll see exactly how that goes for Ole Miss. We'll talk about baseball a little bit tomorrow and a lot of stuff on the agenda. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. Every dayers, we have Barrett Salee and Chris Childers slated for this weekend. And also, we're waiting on the most anticipated football season at Ole Miss ever. You can hear about it all right here. But for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, where they've launched their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming site on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.